Hey, this is Phil Rice, and well, Ben, we're here to talk about what got me particularly interested in talking to you right now is your latest release, which is called Shock Break. This was released on October 19th, so about 3 weeks ago. It's made with Unreal Engine 5, 5.1 actually, iClone 8, and Character Creator 4 are involved. Of course, the Adobe suite of tools for different things, Blender at some point, and you've got a Rococo suit and gloves that are part of it. I'm kind of just basing this off of the list of tools that you said were involved.
Yep.
About 1,300 views as of today, which is far less than it deserves, but it's a nice haul. You know, it's not easy to get 1,300 views
No,
on something that doesn't lean on other people's IP at all. It's a completely independent story. So, at least as far as I can tell. So,
yeah,
congrats on that,
thank
and
you.
it's a beautiful piece, just great execution, and so what. To start off, what was your background? And I should probably know this, being involved with the Machinima community as long as I have. But what's your background with making animations like this prior to iClone, which it looks like you started up with that a number of years ago now? But were you involved with Machinima before that through the movies or one of those types of tools as well?
It started with the movies back in 2007, if I recall.
Okay, so the
December
early days.
2007. Yeah,
Yeah.
very early.
Okay.
And yeah,
Well, clearly the movies, the process of the movies is a lot different than what you're doing now. So tell me a little bit about that evolution. Like, did you kind of get a taste for telling stories with that, frankly, a little bit easier to use tool and decide, yeah, I want to lean into this and do more? I'm curious to know about that because it's quite a bit more complicated process what you're doing now than what we were even able to do with the movies back then.
very much. Actually, at first I was very skeptical of iClone back in when I think it was 2009 when I first got it, or 2010, or something around that time. I don't
Right.
remember. I think it was 2011, maybe. I didn't see much production work with it, and actually, I won it in the competition, iClone 4. So I started like making a short. Then there was an old filmmaker by the name of Shitten who said, "No, you completely tore my first
Oh,
work
geez.
apart." And some people were kind of against that, but said, "No, this is actually pretty helpful advice." So I spent 6 months trying to make a movie out of it and seeing what people are doing. And I realized I kind of dove deep into the tools. And I realized, hey, this has a lot more control because with the movies game, you have all these little scenes here and then you make a movie out of it. But sometimes we kind of went beyond that,
Right.
where basically we used the green screen, we used mods, so I saw iClone as an extension in a way
Hmm.
where there was motion files from Real Illusion that I can use, and then I found out I can alter it. Like I can use the motion layer tool or the puppet to kind of tell like the conversation scenes, because when we were working the movies game, we were pretty good at matching like conversation motions, and that had kind of an advantage, I think,
Right.
where basically, I see people when they were doing stuff in iClone, even to this day where they're emoting, sometimes it's way, way, way off. But now with my Rococo suits, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not the most physically active guy. I can't jump around and do flips or martial arts or anything like
Right.
that very well. I do have like this toy gun, this martial arts gun practicing that kind of is close way to a real gun, so I can use it to move around or stuff like that. But
Right.
Rococo itself is one step beyond because I don't have to rely on those motion conversations. I can act it out. I can do all that, but it's still the same principle applies. You kind of know what to work with iClone. You can't just have characters stand still and talk. There has to be some motion, and you have to
Right.
match that. So it was kind of like like you said, there's a kind of an evolutionary step along the way. iClone is very like it was a huge step forward, but I realized, oh, I can adjust lighting, I can do camera work and all that. And I was going to school at the time for television production when I first got iClone.
Oh, I didn't know
So,
that.
and yeah, in some film studies, yeah, I was handling real life cameras. So I was kind of knowing, okay, what to work with, how to compose a scene. And it was kind of a learning process on both sides. I kind of applied what I learned back and forth.
Sure.
And now these days, it kind of sticks with me. Like with Shot Break, there was a lot of, it was kind of very careful. Like I was trying to plan everything. You can tell a lot of shots were, well, sometimes like I was trying to, let's use the fight scene as an example.
Uh-huh.
The fight scene took a lot of planning. It took me several tries to do. I wasn't sure how to approach it. And so what I did was like I took a storyboard and also I kind of studied Hong Kong action films and some Hollywood stuff. And I realized, oh, I can see what they did. And not only that, but their editing style is a little different than the Americans,
Right.
where Americans edit on the hit. You know, when a character gets hit, they edit that where they take a couple steps back so you see the hit. So I kind of applied that to that. Yeah, so sorry if
Yeah,
I
boy.
veered
And
off course.
no, an action sequence, a melee action sequence like that. Yeah, the guys who do that well in Hollywood make it look so easy, but it's a very, very complicated endeavor. And I even for live action, I think it's probably one of the more planned types of shots that have to be done because of all that can go wrong. And it's not, you're not planning in the same way, obviously, with characters that you can completely control every motion. Whereas with actors, you just have to make sure, okay, don't really hurt him, you know. But it is, yeah, there's a lot of variables, and the camera angles and then the shot selection and how it's edited together can completely change how the scene, you know, what the scene conveys. So yeah, I've heard a number of people over the years talk about that. Man, I didn't realize how challenging it was to do an action sequence like that until I actually did it. And it's some challenging stuff.
It was probably the most challenging scene in the movie easily. The first thing I kind of approached it like it was a dance scene. So you kind of see characters moving along with the
Right.
with the music.
Yeah, choreography, of course.
And I think that's important because even the camera is kind of reflecting off of that. So that's the tough thing because I see a lot of like when this, a lot of the fighting scenes were from Revolution's fight scene pack.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I had a couple of others. I was trying to mix it together. I even thought about like mocapping a couple of ideas where like I had an idea where she kind of froze him against the safe and I would do it myself, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well the mocap suit absorbs shocks and I don't want to lose that suit.
Sure.
I think I've heard it actually does you can take as long as there's some padding, it'll be okay, but I didn't want to risk it. But it's just I see people kind of letting the camera take advantage of it. Like letting the camera draw attention to itself. They're moving around wildly,
Right.
so I didn't want to do that. I thought that would be incredibly distracting. So I just kind of let the camera hold back, and if it was moving with the scene, it's going to move with the characters. That one, like you have to make sure that the characters are in the right spot for the camera, so I can do quick editing.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you don't lose your pace. It's just there's so much to do. Like Mad Max Fury Road, all the characters are in the center of the frame, so it's easy to cut
Right.
back and forth. You ever notice that? I mean, it's one of those things. Just put your cursor in the middle of the screen when you watch Mad Max Fury Road, and you'll notice all the characters are in the center because it's easy for the eyes. You don't wear out people.
Sure. Now, speaking of characters, it seems like that at least one of the characters in this, and maybe multiple, are faces or looks, I guess, that I've seen before in some of your demos going back even a couple years. The masked female character looks a lot like a masked female character that I've seen in some of your demos from a couple years back. So is Shockbreak an idea that's been brewing for quite a while and it's finally come to light, or is it a fairly recent idea that came up?
It was about a year ago. I was testing out iClone 8 demo, and that's really where the idea started. I wanted to do a heist film. I actually looked into it. I studied what jewel thieves do and how they operate and what rules they have to like. There's quite a bit what goes into like these kind of heists and what to expect. And
Sure.
I followed one person was probably up there for a while before he got caught. That was it's probably one that he was easily in the FBI's most wanted list, like easily top 10 for a
Oh,
while
like
before
an
he got.
actual
Yep.
thief. Wow.
So he's on YouTube if you will find him. His name's Larry Lawton. So I looked at him, looked at like what he was going through, and he kind of breaks down what the process is. He easily illustrates that it's not worth the life. It's not worth
Sure.
it. And he's been at it a while, so I kind of studied and looked into what goes into it, and thought, okay, this would be fun. Like he mentions that insurance companies are mostly the ones who pay the price for it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so she makes a point about that. So I kind of looked into it. I thought when iClone 8 came around, and this originally was supposed to be an iClone 8 because I was playing around with volumetric lights and I built the sets where she would fight, and I realized let's try bringing this to Unreal and see what happens because the set design is a lot easier to work with. That's mainly the reason why I work with Unreal. It's not so much the look or anything like that. It's all in your lighting, but it's about how easy the set design is for Unreal and how actually, let's be honest, it's more affordable than
Yeah.
iClone.
No, yeah, it is absolutely. And actually, that was probably that's the culmination of the questions that I was going to put to you today and you've just answered one of them, which is the why. I was very curious about that. If it was something about the render itself, or but you've answered that a lot of it is set related. Now, when putting together an animated film like this, there's a lot of different moving parts. The characters and the animation sequencing, and then the set and the props, and the lighting, and then eventually the cameras. And yeah, you're doing this in a way that sort of leverages the strengths of iClone and the strengths of Unreal. But what does a workflow look like? Like I was trying to think, okay, if I wanted to plan a short that's going to end up in Unreal, but I need to use iClone. I want to use iClone and Character Creator, for those things because it's so good at that. So I guess I've got questions about, well, what's the process there? Because obviously in iClone, you could build out the whole thing. You could build sets and then you could animate things and have the props and the cameras and the lighting and all of that. But when you're doing it straddling both platforms, which stuff is done like natively in Unreal and which stuff is brought across, like maybe through Unreal Live Link or something like that? Because I know it's possible. You technically, I think, could export a set or at least the FBX of a set and then bring it over into Unreal if you know what you're doing. But is that the way to do it? It sounds like maybe you're actually constructing the sets there in Unreal, but then what's involved in lining up? You've got a character that needs to interact, let's say, in a meaningful way with that set. So how do you judge distances and kind of get a feel for that stuff as you're planning out motion for the characters?
Well, technically, there's two ways to approach it.
Okay.
One is live link. You can easily like bring in you can animate your character. Not like that, but Reallusion added something not too long ago where you can take like an object from Unreal and instantly transfer it to iClone with no issue.
Okay.
I've used that many times. I don't use the live link per se, like to bring in animations. So Unreal is pretty much my production. I do all the set work, camera, lighting, everything. I build the set first, then I kind of bring in certain pieces. I don't bring back everything, but only the things that the character needs to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can use iClone to animate around it, and then I send it back through an FBX method. I don't personally like Live Link because I think there's too much work involved in getting everything all set up. And even though I'll be honest, it's probably slower to do it my way and probably not as productive, but it's the one I've kind of built the system around. You can do Live Link or my way, the FBX way. The reason why it's also is I have everything all organized. So I put everything characters, sets for a project I'm working on, which is about an hour long. I'm kind of doing all of the mocap work for it right now.
Hmm.
I have to have scene. I'm putting all my scene set design. Everything's all organized because you don't want everything all in one folder because it's going to be really hard to put in through the sequencer when you're trying to find, oh, what's this scene? When you have like a lot of motion files to work through.
Right.
And with iClone, I think I don't know if it gives you a naming thing or it just makes one name up. It's just kind of frustrating. So it helps with short productions, I think, but with longer stuff, you may have to do it my way. But that's just me. I haven't really experimented too much with LiveLink to make a decision on that. But
Well,
yeah,
I've seen some of your experiments with it because I think you either streamed or maybe did a video of them at some point when you were, and I've seen others too. And it seems like, first of all, that LiveLink, pretty hefty system requirements to get that to perform right. You've got to be running Unreal Engine, and yeah, you can tone down the shaders and things to make it more efficient, but still, it's a heavy program. And then iClone 8 is a heavy program. I don't mean that critically. I just mean, hey, it's doing big things, so it takes up a lot of resources. And even on a really good PC, it seems like that LiveLink, it'd be a challenge to get it to perform well. So I've been wondering about what the alternatives are there because my own experiments with it are, have got me questioning whether this is the best way too. Yeah.
yeah, I ran into that struggle early on because I was rendering like I said, I'm on a 2080 still. I don't have. I've been meaning to upgrade, but I'm just kind of holding off of it right now for the moment.
Sure.
But yeah, I just kind of realized, okay, the live link thing isn't working. So I do like Unreal. I do like its set design and everything. How do I kind of make a system? So I spent at least a good 3 to 4 months just finding a way, experimenting, seeing what I can do. And I thank God for that live link thing where you can send props into iClone because I was doing everything by hand. Like I had to look where it is exactly on the
Right.
it was
Right.
very, very tedious work. Now you don't have to deal with that anymore. But I realized the FBX method, I can still maintain, a good, consistent, there's no lag, everything is already animated by the time I send it.
Sure.
And then when I assemble everything into the sequencer, I have a good vision what to work with. And sometimes I've been known to work on projects I've released a project that was like a minute long. I did it in 4 hours from completely building a project from scratch to when it's done. How I know it because I was watching a Raiders game while doing it, and the project was done by the time a little after the Raiders game. So I was distracted, but it's possible to make a very quick short. You just have to
Yeah,
commit with a
I
plan.
mean, yeah, 4 hours to 1 minute. That's a good ratio for doing something from scratch. That's very good actually. So, are there any types of things that you try to bring over from character creator, or I'm thinking in terms of, especially, I would think hair, certain types of hair, and maybe even assuming that you're dressing out your characters in character creator 4, then stuff with soft cloth physics, do those translate smoothly over to Unreal and behave properly, or do you run into issues with that?
Sometimes it doesn't translate at all. It's always like sorry about that. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't translate this at all. There's you always have to edit it no matter what, and it's a lot easier to do it in Unreal than than iClone because you don't have to make those weight maps at all. But
Right.
it's a little bit of an art. You have to know what to work with.
Sure.
And I think they even changed Unreal, did a complete rehaul of the chaos system. So you might have to learn it again. It might improve. It might not. I haven't really looked into it myself.
So and that would be the arena of things like springiness or yeah, the soft cloth and things like that. Those behaviors. Basically, Unreal has its own physics engine, so to speak, that handles that. So it's not really necessarily about getting that to perform properly in iClone and then moving it to Unreal and expecting the same thing. It's about Unreal has its own system for handling that stuff, and one would just need to be prepared for that. Am I understanding it right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
There's just a lot of, it's kind of, it comes down to planning, and I think that's the most important thing. Like if you need to know you need to have vision. It's something you can't really improv last minute, otherwise it's going to give you a lot of headaches.
Sure. Sure. So you part of your stack of tools is the Adobe suite, including After Effects and stuff like that. How much of what we're seeing in a short like Shock Break, how much of that is what comes right off the render out of Unreal versus what you've had to enhance it with for, atmospherics or, and obviously there's going to be some color grading stuff that anybody from any engine has to do. But in terms of the, when there are effects, is that stuff that you're handling within Unreal before it gets rendered from Unreal, or are you doing a lot more of that with like a tool like After Effects?
For this one, it's going to be After Effects. I'm starting to learn the visual effects inside of Unreal. I'm slowly getting into it, but I didn't really have the time to completely like do this itself. I actually did cancel the service for. I canceled Red Giant Complete or whatever it was called for a while because I had a year of that, so I was working on some productions for it, and I realized with Unreal, I don't think I need it anymore, so I just decided to completely cut Red Giant out this year. So it's not only that, but I'm kind of looking through what I need and don't need.
Everything's a subscription now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It eats up the budget pretty quick.
It does. I just realized, nope, I don't need this anymore. And there's some tools, like I use a program called Soundly because it has a sound effects thing. I think it's like $10 a month or something, which I use quite a bit of it. And even then, I'm looking at Adobe. I'm thinking, do I need Adobe? Because
a lot of people are asking that right now. Yeah, just because there's been kind of an explosion of alternative tools. And yeah, Adobe, of course, is the gold standard. But yeah, people are starting to question it. I'm hoping that the results of that will be Adobe will get more competitive with how they price things.
Yeah, and I think because at some point you just I have to think like, nah, I don't think I need to. I was learning DaVinci Resolve for a while, and I thought this could be a good alternative. And I'm still on the fence of that. I have to decide. I think I'm kind of locked into it for a year now, so I think next July I'll have to make that decision.
So you're using Premiere for your video editing then?
Yep, pretty much Premiere.
Yeah. That's the favorite for sure.
It's something I'm used to. I'm always used to Premiere. I worked with Final Cut Pro. I worked with Avid Media Composer. I've worked with Sony Vegas, DaVinci Resolve. I used to work. My first editing program was Magix, so I kind of worked with a lot of stuff before, and it's been Premiere for a while.
Sure. Yeah. Once you use one for a while, man, it's hard to change. I used Vegas for way longer than I should have. I mean, I was just loyal because I just didn't want to break, my process. But when I tried to get the latest version of Vegas running on Windows 11, I just ran into all sorts of errors and problems. It kept crashing. And that's what kind of forced my hand to, well, I guess I'll try DaVinci because I've just never been someone who knows my way around Adobe stuff well enough to justify the expense. So I thought, well, let's just try DaVinci because it does have the Resolve does have the free version. Let's just see if I can get done what I need to. And I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. But my editing needs are pretty simple compared to, well, I don't know how to compare it to what you do, but I mean, I know that there are people who do stuff in editing that's way more complex than what I do. So I don't know if the free version satisfies that for everybody, but for the kind of stuff that I do, it's I don't miss Vegas. Finally, it's taken me about 6 months, but
I get
yeah,
it.
it's hard. It was so hard to switch though, and I still am right clicking where I should be hitting some other key because that's what I did for 15 years. So it can get frustrating.
I get that. It's like with when I was transferring between Final Cut Pro, because I was an avid, I was cutting that for school. It was really frustrating. I was learning three different programs at once.
Sure.
Premiere, let's see, Final Cut Pro and Avid. So I was like, oh, and they all had different systems. So I was like, oh dear God, come on. But yeah, it's like I was also using Adobe Audition for a lot of the sound work. I've been using Photoshop and Audition a lot more lately, and I actually starting to really like those tools. I'm trying to take sound editing a little more seriously. Like I'm trying to learn a little more about EQ and all that. It's been a very weak area, and there's some parts in Sound Shock Break that I can improve on when it comes to sound editing. I'm still learning, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's
I don't know if any of us, if we're honest, none of us, everyone should be saying that about about their film. That there's stuff I can still learn how to do better on sound. I am definitely that way, and I've been doing it a long time. Like even I mean, I went to school for some of that, and still, it's own science. It really is, and it's rewarding, but it's very time consuming to learn all the ins and outs of EQ and compression and all of that. I envy any team that has a dedicated sound guy, which not many do. Not many
no,
indie teams like us do. No.
no, and I actually do know a couple of people who do this for a living. So I
Yeah.
thought if I'm raising, like I thought I'm actually at the point where I'm looking for fundraising for Shock Break.
Right. I
You know,
saw that.
I'm looking around. I'm kind of once I get back from holiday on December, I'll kind of take it a little more seriously and look into, okay, I need this, how much, because a lot of the voice talent, that those are professional voice actors, and they agreed to a reasonable price, but I thought about paying them a little more, like respectable, um,
Sure.
a
Yeah,
little more.
you can. I think that for teams that can figure out this budget challenge, which for anybody who wants to take it seriously, but it's not a corporate backed thing like what you're doing. It's that's so hard to where do you come up with the money for that? But when you do, it seems like you could really build out a nice kind of a stable of talent, for voice in particular, of people who have a versatile skill set and could be helpful on multiple productions, and you get used to working with them, and so it's communication is improved, and there's like this whole frontier of a really cool production process. But yeah, to I think the days of pro grade people just volunteering, which maybe I'm just remembering big, but it seems like back in the mid you know early 2000s that it just felt like that the community around what was calling itself Machinima had a lot of people who were, like Ricky Grove. The guy is, I mean, he's got an IMDb page the length of my arm. I mean, he's a pro,
Yeah.
and he's just doing it for free for whoever asks. Seems like those are harder to find, and I'm not sure why that is. Some of it, I think, is the gig economy that people are able to monetize these gifts that they have without taking on full-time jobs with it, through Fiverr or through these any number of stables like that, or that are specifically for voice talent. So yeah, it's almost become a must to have some kind of funding
Yeah.
through Patreon or through friends and family, or it really depends on how fortunate a person is to who they've got that's willing to throw a few bucks at them. But I'll be watching your efforts with that with great interest, because it's a part of doing this at a high level, that it makes doing it at a high level much easier when there's even just a modest budget available.
Yeah. I
But
think
but it Go ahead.
it's quite important, like especially voice talents. It's kind of hard to like It's kind of hard to gauge, like how to find good voice talent. A lot of people struggle with that, and
Sure.
I'm going to be honest. This is kind of a serious critique on my end. I see people championing AI voices, and I'm on that side. Like, no, it's not going to work because your audience will know better. Your audience is going to say, something's wrong, or that a human can easily run away with that a computer can't. So, sad to say, I'm not very excited about that. To be honest, and you
I
hear like,
agree completely. I think maybe the only place that I see value in it would be in a setting of comedy where it's like not supposed to sound real, or if it's supposed to be a synthetic, robot voice, then okay, maybe that helps.
yep,
But for actual serious or even semi-serious dramatic roles, yeah, there's just I have a hard time seeing how AI generated is ever going to be able to bring to the table what a halfway decent regular actor can do.
yep. And I mean, I'll just kind of praise, Crystal, who's the lead VA. She gave me efforts with now. I didn't even ask for them. I forgot to. I'm like, oh wait, and then she just had like another file which was efforts. So it's like 3 or 4 minutes of her fighting,
Yeah.
doing those fight noises. I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. And she played a pretty good performance.
Oh, she was great. Yeah. I assume that she's done some work before,
Oh
either
yeah,
for video games or something. But yeah, I mean, just yeah, it
she's
was.
in.
She's a great sound.
Yeah, she's in. I think she's in Genshin Impact or something.
Okay.
So a lot of actors, I think a few of them are in Genshin. Actually, I noticed. I think Damon is who voices one of the agents. He's in. I think he's in it. I have to check his resume, but yeah, just a lot of it was scouting. A lot of it I was kind of listening to. Like, okay, Crystal was in a previous production of mine. She auditioned for this role, and she had one line where I was like, okay, yep, that's her. That's like the attitude, like that's her.
Yeah.
Immediately, I know. And it's always fun. Like we always bring like there's one the other agent Holly. Like I knew, boom, she's right for the part
Yeah.
because I'd known this actress for a while. She voiced in a project of mine previously as a test, and I thought, okay, she'll be great for this role or this. And scouting is kind of like I have I kind of immersed myself in the voice acting community for a while, so I know why. Like, okay, who to turn to just in case, or
Right. Right.
perfect. And
Yeah, I actually I remember watching on Twitter some of the casting interactions going on for this film for Shockbreak, and at one point somebody kind of got a little testy with you, thinking that you weren't offering enough money and whatnot, and
they thought I was a pro studio,
right, right,
and they were surprised. They were like, "Oh, wait, you're just one guy. Oh, wow, I'm so sorry."
yeah,
Like
yeah.
at some point, I was like, first I was hurt. I'm like, "What? I'm just Indian." Like, and then
I
another
remember that
point,
I
I'm like,
watched it. I felt so bad for you because I'm like, dude, it's like a gut punch. So,
on the other hand,
uh,
like everyone thinks, "Oh, you think I'm a pro? I'm just a single guy doing this."
right, yeah. So you're working on you're. It looks like you're. Well, I don't know if you've shared this with others yet, but it sounds like you're looking toward developing more to the Shockbreak story. But I've also seen you mention another project that you appear to be working on at the same time, or maybe it is related. I don't know, but called Red Strike. Is
Yep.
there anything that you're ready to tell anyone about that yet, or is it still under wraps?
We should see it in probably late December. I'm
Oh, that
working on the
soon.
mocap.
Okay.
Yep. I'm working on the mocap. I'm nearly halfway through it right now.
Well, that's great. Then let's not risk any spoilers at all. If it's going to come that soon, I can wait for
And,
that. That's great.
and I was working on a major project. Damien should know about it. It's been in production for years. It's like a running joke. It's called Endgame. I've been working on mocap for that.
Yeah.
God knows. I think this production's been longer for 12 years, off and on, because it was just one of the most difficult projects I have ever seen. I don't like Unreal is probably the only thing I can work with it on it. I've been working with Rush Hour, which is this AI thing for, it trains the vehicles to run automatically on a track or a spline. And there's so much action scenes. Like I said, I got this fake gun. So like I had to do mocap scenes with it that Reolution or nobody can do. And I don't know when that's going to be done. I've been just decided to say, okay, I'm just going to finish the mocap for it. And then once the most recent version of Unreal, by the time it's done, I'm just going to throw it in and see what happens.
Okay.
You know,
Well, very cool. So you got a few pans on the fire at different stages. That's great. I look
yep,
forward to seeing what you produce, and I appreciate that you have at various points taken time to offer up tutorial videos or insights into your process through your videos. I mean, there's more of those than there are narrative shorts in your thing, and it's a very generous thing. And I think it's one of the things that keeps this community vibrant is that sharing of, hey, here's what I've learned. This is what works for me. You know, it's super handy. So I appreciate you doing that.
problem. It's a new frontier. Like there's so many requests. A lot of people are wondering how to make movies with Unreal,
Yeah,
and it's completely new territory. I'm I think one of the few people who do it like quite a bit, where I can start sharing all, not just like, oh, here's the new toy of the week or anything like that. It's more like, here's how to make a movie. Here's
right.
what you can do. There's not a whole lot of YouTube channels that cover that, and
I agree. I know that from searching for them
that
because I'm very curious about it as well. I've gotten to where I feel comfortable with iClone now, but I'm realizing that there's going to be aspects where Unreal needs to be involved to do some of what I want to do, and so it's like, okay, now I got to learn that. So I'll definitely be a viewer and supporter of any content like that you put out, and I appreciate your time today, and
thank you.
it was great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll. I'd love to do this again sometime when I've got enough questions to keep you talking for about this time. You're somebody that wanted to talk to for a while, and frankly, I know your time is precious, and mine's been pressed as well. So I'm glad we were able to work this out on relatively short notice, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Thank you. Pleasure to talk to you as well. It's been really fun. Sorry if I was rambling too much, sorry.
No, no, that's why I got you on here. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and look forward to speaking to you again.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All righty.